In the 80s, there was a big callback, flashback to the 50s, and eventually there was going to be made a movie about back to the 50s that wasn't a sci-fi, but actually a horror movie.
Mm-hmm. I think we have that with our chosen pick today, which is 1986's Night of the Creeps, which is one of my favorite B horror movies that knows it's a B horror movie. Breaking down Fred Decker, who's a great writer and a great director, and getting to dive into, this is one of, again, like we talk ambition sometimes, I think this is a very ambitious horror film, so it's going to be fun to break this one down with you today.
It's funny because it actually was a nostalgia piece of 50s horror and pulp magazines, and now you get the double nostalgia of 80s movies. Talk about the 50s.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a great cast of some unknowns, but some real good character actors, some real good people that's how you live and breathe in horror. So, in fact, it's Tom Atkins' favorite film of the movies he's appeared in.
Oh, this is great.
And he's wanted to revisit it with a sequel for decades since it's been out. In fact, he still talks about it when he goes out and about and does his work at conventions. So, we're definitely going to break it down. Night of the Creeps today, with myself, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
And I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Let's get started.
Real me. Welcome back to the show. Today we're talking Night of the Creeps, 1986, Fred Decker. For myself, this is a film that I have memories of catching on cable TV late at night.
That's right. Everybody got
and I caught it in bits and pieces. I remember catching like 10-minute chunks of it, which as a kid I do, and today it just kind of makes me nervous to do that. But Night of the Creeps for me was one that was kind of fun, especially because I was able to visit it on TV, and then later on actually get a copy of the Blu-ray for the film that has the director's cut with the actual ending that Fred Decker wanted to have, and a lot more kind of his quirky wackiness to it. Did you experience this film right when it came out, Nick? Or?
No, this was actually one of those that actually got traction after being released. I think people went to see it. I think it got money on the theater. But, it came out in 86. It got on TV during Halloween, 88, 89. I remember seeing on regular local TV as during Halloween. And then you said, you see pieces of it as a kid and all that stuff. And I think the traction came from afterwards, after many years afterwards, that people gain an affection for it, because it's all about nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
And its biggest accomplishment is something that's extremely difficult to do when you are homaging or parodying, and that is giving respect. And also when you're purposely making a B movie, you have to make it, you can't make it look like you're purposely making a B movie, which is a really tough thing to do. Certain films, like Cabin in the Woods, I feel like aims at that B movie level.
But that has a big production.
Yeah, Grindhouse kind of did the same thing. Machete. These films that aim to be kind of those grindhousey or B movie films, and they make it look like it's supposed to be. Whereas this is another film that does the same thing. We open with aliens on a ship. We have slugs.
I forgot about their naked aliens.
Yeah,
you watch them and you're like, "What? Am I at the right movie?"
And then what I love is that we get this really stylistic opening. Of course, the spaceship. We get the crash landing meteorite thing, and
very
then we
much
cut
like
to
Invasion
the
from
50s,
Mars. Yeah,
and we get this black and white 50s kind of style there, and then it cuts we finally get to the 80s, 15, 20 minutes into the movie, and I feel like it's a really interesting way to start a film. There's definitely, it came from outer space vibes and really those B horror movie vibes to it, and it kind of covers everything.
As well as being from a black and white 50s, with predominantly every movie from the 50s was black and white.
Mm-hmm.
You had the classic horrors and everything. So it's a basic, a whole sale now of just nostalgia pieces of how you made a movie in the 80s and the appreciation in the 80s of the 50s, which in the 80s, in the mid 80s, everything was all back to 50s, as much as people do now with the 80s.
With the 80s.
With the 80s, where everybody was, had back to 50 dances at high school. You had back to 50s radio. You had restaurants. You had back to 50s car shows starting. And so there was this huge part when I'm sure, well, if we're going to do all of it, let's have a movie that talks about, the horror movies that were marketed to teenagers in the 50s at the start, like The Blob and all that stuff.
Absolutely. And when you get a guy, I praise his name all the time, Fred Decker, who hasn't worked a lot recently. He most recently did a couple drafts of the Predator film that came out a couple years ago, but really got to start with things like The Monster Squad with this film. He wrote the story that became House, which is one of my favorite horror movies ever. And then, and kind of fell off because he made that much maligned RoboCop 3 film. I think it was just a bit broader than his scope that he had planned on, and kind of then he just disappeared for a while. He worked on some rewrites and stuff, but didn't really release any of his own stuff for a while. And I really enjoy his work, especially here because he's a man who really cares about the films. We look at all the character names, all the characters' last names are horror directors. We have Romero's, we have Carpenter's, we have Hooper's, we have Raimi's, and I think that's really kind of a cool. That's something that's done more often.
As a kid, you don't notice it, but there was like Sergeant Raimi, and it was like.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But then that wasn't really done at the time as much. It's done a lot more now. The nostalgia train being what it is, more people do that nowadays. I think back in '86, that wasn't as well done. What's interesting to me is the number of characters that are named after younger and just starting horror filmmakers that actually became big deals. Like they didn't fizzle out. They still kept working and putting out great content. But Jason Lively is our star, who I think really just hit it out with European Vacation.
Yeah, that's where he got started, yeah. It is.
And hasn't done a ton since then, but I think he's a very Anthony Michael Hall-ish, Rusty, kind of a character. So
very non-threatening, very looks wholesome, which you see that his point of view that, he's not part of the group. There's a little bit of Animal House fun to this, kind of.
And I think it's funny that he sees this girl that he's kind of into, and his answer to wooing her isn't to go talk to her. It's, I gotta be cool, so I'll join a fraternity. Like that's a very
instead of just going direct, right? Instead of going direct, we're going to circumnavigate.
Yeah, we're gonna run around it right there. And I think like the teen comedy and the teen hijinks are very fun. And again, like they are a little cliched intentionally. We get the jock boyfriend,
Bradster.
who I think doesn't that one guy say to Brad at one point? He goes, "Why don't you go try goose stepping for a little while?" Like he's very much a blonde hair, blue-eyed, hunky jerk
which
bag.
Gives a lot of flavor to this movie because all the characters are way overdoing it, which gives a lot of fun. Tom Atkins, we have to talk about him.
Absolutely.
Because he way overdoes this. He's a distraught detective. He wears the long coat. He's got the 50s car. He's kind of stuck in his formula. He's never going to change.
There's no more over-the-top introduction to a character than a dream sequence where he's on a beach, just drinking a drink out of a coconut while these attractive lower halves of women walk by him, and and then he wakes up from his dream and he's kind
just
of
mad. He has to do his job.
Yeah, I absolutely love Tom Atkins in this film. I think this is probably my favorite character that he's ever played. I think he really has a knack for what he's doing here, and he has fun with the material.
You can't really hide his blue-collar background. You can just tell from him that he came from, blue-collar families.
Yeah, I love that he's just the entire film, he's just kind of involved in this, like, wacky, crazy adventure, but he always plays it straight to the chest. He reminds me of, like, a Leslie Nielsen in Airplane, where, like, he's unaware of the weirdness going on, and he's just here to do his job. So
yeah, and I've talked about the main one because you're kind of relating to that. The best stories always have some kind of a conscious character, and I think Tom Atkins' character, almost since he's in this kind of weird story, I'm just going to roll with it.
Yeah, he's very much the straight man, just kind of working his way through, whereas everyone else is kind of buying into what's going on, and he's like, I've got a job, let's take care of it.
I swear to God, it was not in the script of him reprimanding the cop that there's two bodies and there's only one. And he goes on for 5 minutes. I swear that's not in the script. That's him going off and then just keep filming. Just keep filming.
I could believe that.
That is
I know Atkins has knowledge of like the fact that he does kind of play around a lot more on set, and he wants directors that work with him in that way. And he spoke very highly of his collaboration with Fred Dekker, probably because he was a big deal and Dekker was doing his first movie ever, so he was probably a little intimidated.
Yeah, he can get a little weird.
But their interaction was very strong, so much so that Atkins, again, to this day, talks about he wants a sequel and he wants to work with Dekker again. I think they have a very good collaborative sense.
No, you can see it. It comes out of the screen. It's fun to watch. He's owning it, right? Yeah.
And so, especially seeing Ray Cameron working with Jason Lively's Chris, it's a very strange pairing. And as the film grows closer, and these two are forced
it's almost
to
like
work
they know
together,
it, right? They know
like
really
it's kind of like they know that this is the Odd Couple kind of a situation that they're both in. It builds towards this really fun finale.
Which it does. It has a great, and I talk about all the time, a good movie has to have a great ending. This has a great ending to it.
Absolutely. And again, I gotta say, if you can get your hands on the director's cut and watch that ending, it's a much better film. But even the theatrical cut's ending is fun too. It just doesn't really tie the film up very well. But overall, I think Night of the Creeps, that finale, I mean, of course, I got good news and bad news. The good news is your dates are here. What's the bad news? They're dead.
Great pronoun. I mean, you talk about it in The Simpsons, pronoun. Great pronoun game.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And I think we haven't touched upon probably the greatest, the greatest strength of Decker is that it's a great sense of screenwriting. He's got great dialogue. He's got great one-liners. I mean, "Thrill Me" is just one of my favorite lines ever from any film, and the fact that we get to hear it 5 or 6 times.
#Thrill Me. Yeah, put a hashtag "Thrill Me."
Hashtag, yeah.
Hashtag "Thrill Me" on there, which is a very catchy. I don't really work in catchy phrases, but when you get it right, it pays off massively.
Yeah, so much of the dialogue in the film is very relatable of the time, and also very catchy, and you kind of go with it. Again, if this is a film that was made 20 years later during the time of the Line-O-Rama comedies, where people were kind of trying to come up with catchphrases, like this film would have been much, much more in set with it then too, and that's probably why it's built a cult following.
I don't know. Does this movie have a sequel called Slither?
Yeah. I didn't realize when watching Slither how much was in common. I realized it when I revisited.
When you revisit Slither, you'll see how much it's almost.
And you can, I mean, that's a very James Gunn thing though too. James Gunn grew up with this kind of cinema, and he made a lot of this kind of cinema before he got his budgets.
And that's really funny. Actually, go back and watch Slither after watching Night of the Creeps and see the kind of the comparisons, because Nathan Fillion is kind of doing the Tom Atkins kind of a thing, where he's a conscientious character. He knows he's in this world, and he's just gonna have a lot of fun shooting slugs. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's definitely the slug thing.
Yeah,
it's just fantastic.
Which was never really shown before. Night of the Creeps never really had that kind of a feel. I mean, this is one really pronounced slugs that can get into you. John Carpenter talks about it. Evil is something that comes out of you or goes in you, and this is both.
Yeah, it goes right through. It takes a little bit of time in there incubating, and then kind of comes right back out again.
I'm sure the makeup and special effects had a wonderful time making those things.
I think K&B. It might have been before they had become K&B, but they were working on the film, and they worked on a lot of the zombie effects. And I think the effects are very, very wild and crazy, but also very fun and I don't want to say realistic. It's wrong to say realistic, but realistic.
You can tell a little bit of the string kind of.
Yeah, you can. There's one moment particularly where you can see the string pulling, and I just love it all the more for that. And I think that's kind of
right. It's almost like we're making a B movie. We're ready to cut and redo it. No.
Yeah, when you make a B movie. When you forcibly make a B movie, people catch on to those goofs, but it almost makes the film more endearing.
Yeah. So, I have to say, the other scene that's in the men's in the bathroom being attacked by a slug, that is the cleanest bathroom I've ever seen in the 80s in my entire life.
That's fair.
That is the cleanest.
Other than the slugs, it's pretty...
Their attempt to make it dirty by putting graffiti and stuff still makes it cleaner than any public bathroom.
I was surprised there was only 2 graffiti marks on that wall. Once, it's kind of like breaking the seal. You put one on there and people are just going to keep adding to it.
Yeah.
But overall, I think, the music is strong. I think the cinematography is light and fluffy. It never feels...
No, but the camera's always
moving a lot.
Yeah, they really did really well being on black and white nostalgia 50s. So really some of that.
Absolutely, yeah. So for me, again, one of my favorite go-tos for this time of year is Night of the Creeps. So I was more than happy that we both kind of share a kinship for it. So definite recommendation for me if you can catch that director's cut. It's really a better film. Both great though. You can't go wrong with it. So definite recommendation for me. I love that we're breaking into films that cover everything. They have slashers, they have slugs, they have aliens, they have zombies.
I'm just going to throw it all
everything in there.
Naked
Give me a sequel
aliens
with vampires. Nick, what about you? You still think this is
I think when you talk 80s horror movies or any of it, this has to be mentioned. It is such an impact about what happened afterwards. There's a lot of play afterwards. And then nostalgia about how to make an 80s movie. Very mixture of Animal House and horror movies. I mean, you got it all together.
Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing we can use to describe the film, it is definitely fun. Without a doubt. Even if you're not scared at any point, even if you're not not believing a lot of stuff that happens, it is absolutely fun and enjoyable. And that's kind of what this season is about, is having fun with being scared. That's my favorite part of it. And that's why I like the film. So
It's a great ending.
Absolutely, yes. Check out the ending. Check out everything, though.
So, thrill me. Thrill you.
Thrill us. Thrill us with your thoughts on the film.
Yes.
Comment down below. We want to hear your thoughts on Night of the Creeps. Is it where does it rank in your Fred Decker love or Jason Lively? Is it better or worse than European Vacation? We want to know your thoughts on the film, so drop that stuff on down below.
That's a good question.
Give us a like. If you want to catch more of our videos, you can also subscribe below. We have new episodes coming out every single week. You don't want to miss those, especially right now. We're getting into the horror movie season, so we got more content coming in the next couple of weeks here. So, hey, there's got to be a way that you can help contribute. Nick, is there a way that they can contribute?
If you want to be part of the team and help out with the content, join the Patreon. And you can do it simply for $1 a month.
That's how low.
Yeah.
You can go higher. You can go higher, but you can start at low as well, too. So,
and then you get to join the team.
Yeah, patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. The link's down in the description below. So check that out. Give us a look there. And don't forget to share this video to keep the conversation going. So, absolutely. As always, you can find my many, many film reviews on GoFilmReviews.com. We can find Nick elsewhere.
On iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Your dates are here.